War has always been a brutal and unforgiving force, but behind the battle lines, there are often secrets so dark, so twisted, that history tries to bury them. From betrayal within ranks to horrifying atrocities, some of the darkest war secrets have been hidden from the public eye. These are the stories of blood and betrayal, where loyalty was tested, and the consequences were far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. In today's video, we're uncovering the darkest secrets from history's greatest conflicts, stories that have remained in the shadows for years, some of which might surprise you. So, let's start. 10. The Execution of the 7,000. The Forgotten Atrocities of W2. During World War II, one of the most chilling betrayals happened within Nazi-occupied Poland. The Katyn Massacre, as it came to be known, was the execution of over 22,000 Polish officers, intellectuals, and political figures by the Soviet secret police, the NKVD. The betrayal came not only from the Soviet Union, but from within Poland's own ranks, as some officials were forced into cooperation with the Soviets. While the massacre itself is well known, the cover-up afterward remains one of the darkest secrets of the war. The Soviet Union denied their involvement for decades, placing the blame on the Nazis. For years, those responsible for these atrocities were protected, and it wasn't until much later that the truth came to light. 9. The Winter War. Soviet betrayal of their own soldiers. The Winter War between the Soviet Union and Finland, 1939-1940, revealed one of the most brutal betrayals by the Soviet leadership. As the war raged on, the Soviets had a massive numerical advantage over Finland, yet they suffered devastating losses. What made this conflict even more shocking was the treatment of Soviet soldiers by their own commanders. Many Soviet troops were sent to the front lines ill-prepared, often without proper clothing or even weapons. In some instances, Soviet commanders abandoned their own men on the battlefield, leaving them to freeze or be slaughtered by Finnish forces. The harsh betrayal by those who were supposed to protect them led to severe discontent within the Soviet ranks. 8. The death of the Lost Battalion. Betrayal in WWI. During World War I, one of the most infamous incidents of betrayal occurred when a unit of the 77th Division, known as the Lost Battalion, found itself surrounded by German forces in the Argonne Forest. The battalion, led by Major Charles White Whittlesey, was trapped and cut off from any chance of reinforcement or escape. Despite their desperate situation, the US command failed to send immediate support or clear the confusion surrounding their location. Orders to relieve the battalion were delayed, and ultimately, over 500 men were either killed or wounded before they were rescued. The betrayal came not only from the battlefield, but from commanders who failed to properly manage or communicate, leaving the soldiers to fight for survival in one of the war's most brutal and unnecessary situations. 7. The betrayal of the Free French Resistance by the Allies, WW2. During World War II, the French resistance played a crucial role in gathering intelligence and sabotaging Nazi operations. However, a secret betrayal occurred between the Free French forces, led by Charles de Gaulle and the Allied powers. In 1943, while de Gaulle sought to gain political and military recognition as the leader of Free France, the British secretly made deals with Vichy France in an effort to keep peace with the collaborators. This secret pact with Vichy France resulted in an undermining of the Free French's operations and a betrayal of the brave men and women who had fought against the Nazis. De Gaulle's forces felt abandoned as they struggled to assert their authority, knowing the Allies had secretly made concessions to those they considered traitors. 6. The tragic betrayal of the Bataan Death March, WW2. One of the most brutal events of World War II was the Bataan Death March in the Philippines. Following the surrender of the Bataan Peninsula to Japan in 1942, over 70,000 American and Filipino prisoners of war were forced to march more than 60 miles through scorching heat, without food or water, to prison camps. What made this tragedy even worse was the betrayal from within the Japanese military, who violated the rules of war by abusing prisoners, killing hundreds, and subjecting them to severe torture and neglect. The betrayal wasn't just from the Japanese army, but from the American and Filipino forces who were overwhelmed and had no chance to defend themselves, leaving their comrades vulnerable. The Bataan Death March remains one of the most horrific examples of betrayal during WW2, where those entrusted to defend their fellow soldiers were ultimately abandoned. 5. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, a betrayal of alliances, WWI. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 set off a chain of events that led to World War I. But what many don't know is that this assassination was a betrayal of long-standing alliances. Serbian nationalists had been plotting against the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but the involvement of Serbian officials in planning the murder marked a betrayal not only of the imperial family, but also of international peace. The assassination was used as a pretext for Austria-Hungary to declare war on Serbia, which in turn dragged in the system of alliances that enveloped most of Europe. The betrayal came not from just the assassin, but from the larger political schemes that underestimated how a single act could lead to the catastrophic escalation of global conflict, destroying the stability of an entire continent. 4. The secret surrender of Italy, WW2. In 1943, Italy's surrender to the Allies was one of the most controversial and secretive betrayals of World War II. Mussolini's fascist regime had been a staunch ally of Nazi Germany, but by 1943, Italy had lost faith in the Axis powers. The betrayal came when Italy tried to back out of the war without informing Germany, leaving their Axis partner completely blindsided. Hitler responded with the invasion of Italy and the capture of Mussolini, which led to the establishment of a puppet government under the German Reich. The secret and sudden shift in allegiances left Germany deeply humiliated and enraged, fueling further conflict in the region and eventually delaying the Allied push into mainland Europe. 3. The Battle of Stalingrad, Stalin's betrayal of his own soldiers. One of the darkest and most tragic moments in World War II was the Battle of Stalingrad. Joseph Stalin, despite his position as leader of the Soviet Union, betrayed his own soldiers by sending them into death traps without proper resources, planning, or support. Despite overwhelming odds, Soviet soldiers were forced to fight on, facing starvation, freezing temperatures, and constant bombardment. Stalin's refusal to allow any retreat and his insistence on defending the city to the last man led to unimaginable casualties. The betrayal wasn't just about sacrifice, it was about a lack of compassion for those fighting on the front lines, leaving them to suffer without any strategic hope for survival. 2. The D-Day deception, spies, double agents, and Allied betrayal. The D-Day invasion was one of the most crucial turning points in World War II. But the Allies had to deceive the Nazis into thinking the invasion would take place somewhere other than Normandy. This required an elaborate campaign of spies and double agents designed to mislead German intelligence into believing that the Allied forces would land in Pas-de-Calais. While these deception tactics were ultimately successful, they involved several high-level betrayals. Some of the double agents involved in the deception were operating with the understanding that they might not survive the war. The use of deception, while necessary, left many of these spies facing betrayal and danger on both sides of the conflict, making D-Day not only a military strategy, but also a game of shadows and lies. 1. The betrayal of the Red Baron, WI. Finally, one of the most iconic betrayals in military history was the death of Manfred von Richthofen, also known as the Red Baron, during World War I. Known for his extraordinary skill as a fighter pilot, the Red Baron was shot down and killed in 1918 under mysterious circumstances. Some believe that the Red Baron's final moments were not as heroic as they appeared. It is possible that his death was a result of an intentional act of sabotage by his own commanders, who saw him as a liability after his growing fame. His death ended the era of the ace pilot and left many to wonder if his demise was a consequence of betrayal, both on the battlefield and within the very military that had once celebrated his victories. History is full of shocking secrets, betrayals, and untold stories. Stories that might have remained hidden forever if not for those brave enough to uncover them. If you found these stories intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with others who love to learn about the unknown. Let us know your thoughts on these dark moments in the comments below.